Playoff basketball is back in Houston. Well, in 2 games it'll be. Nonetheless, we managed to make the playoffs and avoid the play-in tournament entirely somehow. I'm guessing it was a bunch of tiebreakers we had with other teams, but our opponent in the first round matchup is another team who's ended their playoff drought, although theirs is way more significant than ours. This is the first time in almost 15 years, the Sacramento Kings are back in the postseason setting, and that was on the back of their 2 best players, De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. Their 3 through 5 is honestly not good. It's Patrick Baldwin Jr., a rookie, Thad Young, and Andre Drummond. So, me talking about having Christian move in space and around screens is directly related to this. If we can get Drummond away from the basket, he's likely to make some mistakes, and that's going to be easy offense for us, theoretically. Another thing about this lineup is the fact that they have 2 non-shooters on the floor with the starters, and one who is league average in Baldwin. That's going to let us help off of guys to help deter Fox's drives to the rim, and honestly, outside of that, I'm not sure what else their offense could be. Halliburton may have gotten better as a shot creator. I know he's the best shooter on the team at 42% from 3, so we will not be leaving him open. Off the bench, they don't really have a lot of guys either. Davion Mitchell and Rashawn Holmes are the most notable, even though they are pretty good. Harrison Barnes is aged, and then I'm not really worried about Terrence Davis, Austin Rivers, and Jamari Smith Jr. Granted, we don't really have much off the bench either. KPJ and Şengün are our only guys, really. So on the top end, they do have us beat, but in the middle and lower end of the roster, we've got better players and are pretty equal, honestly. In the playoffs, star power does rule, so Jalen Green is really going to have to step up in his first playoffs if we're going to get out of this series. Which I do think we have a chance of doing, by the way. I think we have enough defense on the perimeter in the starting unit, and that paired with the horrible spacing on the Kings, we should be able to do a number on De'Aaron Fox's offense. But enough speculation. Let's actually show the Kings that we can handle them just fine. I wasn't entirely sure exactly what the Kings' game plan would be because they don't exactly have a ton of weapons, but there was actually a surprising amount of Andre Drummond this quarter. I mean, he dunked all over Christian in the first possession of the game, and then he proceeded to commit a blocking foul and jumped at Christian's shot, allowing the layup the very next possession. So I guess that's pretty representative of the Andre Drummond experience. Offense was still hard to come by in the beginning minutes. It was really a feeling out process of the defense and what exactly we could get away with. We did end up finding some sort of rhythm towards the end of the quarter. We just had to get through the really sloppy basketball in the first. Lots of avoidable mistakes, passes going through hands, seemed a lot like the first time jitters. We do have a team full of inexperienced guys after all. As I said though, the last half of the quarter, we did manage to put some points on the board. I think it helped that the Kings bench came in, and honestly, it's pretty bad. Either way, we end the first up 24-20, which I think is a pretty good place to start. The second quarter was pretty close for the most part. The Kings were able to match our scoring pretty much every time down the floor, and once again, there was a ton of Drummond involved in this. It was really the strangest thing. It was either De'Aaron Fox pull-up threes or Drummond post-ups. Luke Walton needs to be fired for this game plan that he came out with. Christian kept us ahead the entire first half of the quarter. He drained a 3, posted up Halliburton several times, and overall, just had a great quarter of basketball. Towards the last part of the quarter, we started to pull away from the Kings a bit. They stopped matching our scoring, and we were still getting stops. But DeJounte was the real one who kept his foot on their throat, though. He was absolutely carving up this Kings defense and pretty much getting any shot at the rim he wanted. I want to say he had like 10 points in the final minutes of the quarter. Just a great performance from him to put us up big going into halftime. And not only was he scoring himself, but he was dishing the ball to Christian Wood and getting him part of his big game as well. And truth be told, the third quarter wasn't any more competitive. I mean, they managed to keep the deficit where it was for the most of the quarter, but that was around 20 points, so it didn't really help their cause. The defense for the Kings was just awful. I mean, I guess it's a pretty accurate representation to real life. They have one of the worst defenses in the league. And facing a team like us who has a lot of versatile offensive weapons, that's not exactly a good matchup for them. I will say that Jovic definitely had himself a game. He hit a lot of fading jumpers and exploited mismatches like a pro. He held the bench unit together when nothing else was really working. He was a big reason we were up 30 going into the fourth, which I naturally did not play, being up that much. So we won 124-81 in an absolute domination of the Kings, holding them to some crazy percentages while shooting crazy percentages. We out-rebounded them by 20 for defensive rebounds, and our points in the paint were near double theirs. Their defense was awful, as anticipated. I mean, it was just awful. Drummond was useless, and they had end-of-the-bench guys playing for them most of the game. These guys might be okay for the regular season, but in a playoff setting, it's just not viable with all of their weaknesses. But we really had some guys step up, namely DeJounte Murray. He held De'Aaron Fox to 20 points on 4 for 16 shooting. Meanwhile, scoring 23 points, getting 12 assists, and 6 steals. He only missed one shot, and he was very helpful in getting Christian Wood his 30 points and 13 rebounds. Just an amazing performance by our team. Jalen Green had a pretty good playoff debut. He was a little more inefficient than you would like, but for a rookie in their first playoff game, he was instrumental in helping us get this win. And I already mentioned Nikola Jovic. He was great, and I really think when Tice comes back, he might keep that starting spot. He's been really solid as a rebounder, as a help defender, and on the offense. So I'm really excited for this team, and while the next game is likely going to be much more difficult, I think this team has proven they're ready.